Steve Green asks, do you have an article or video on blood flow restriction training technique? Steve, we're getting ready to launch in about a month? About a month we're going to launch the musclephd.com. And on the musclephd.com we will have an extensive article on blood flow restriction. As far as a video, check out bodybuilding.com Project Mass, and we explain the technique in there in video format with Lawrence Ballinger and my colleague Ryan Larry. Ben Vincent asks, can you expand on general strategy for simultaneous lean mass / fat gain? Yeah, Ben, what it all comes down to is it all depends on how conditioned or lean you are. If someone has a higher body fat, like 20+% body fat, it's going to be easy to gain fat and lose muscle at the same time. General resistance training, general either clean eating or ketogenic dieting. Make sure, if you're not ketogenic dieting, I would recommend having higher protein, like maybe 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight, and more of the lower glycemic carbohydrates, vegetables, or you do ketogenic dieting, and you're going to want your training frequency to be high. The other thing is your cardio. Very long duration cardio is going to actually make you lose muscle mass, but short duration high intensity cardio we've actually found makes you gain lean mass. Do you have any info on ketosis increase? Let me say it again. Missed that. Do you have any info on ketosis increasing / causing joint pain? It actually does the opposite, Robert. There's research in Nature now showing that ketogenic dieting is anti-inflammatory. Caleb goes, on your recipe for cookie dough Oreo sandwiches, it calls for use of coconut fiber. Caleb, the reason why you're having a hard time finding that is because it's really coconut flour. But it's so high in fiber that I just called it fiber. Trey Harlan asks, what's the best alternative for someone who has trouble sticking with a keto diet? It's interesting, Trey. I just read an article where they did ketogenic dieting with seizure patients. And basically, their whole point is that they can't stick to keto because they're having to keep their carbs like under 20 grams. And they did a low glycemic alternative where they actually got their carbs up to 50, 60 grams a day. And but they were all from lower glycemic carbs like broccoli and lentils and stuff like that. And they actually stayed, they ranged in ketosis from like 0.5 to 3 millimolars. And it actually was just as effective at treating like seizures as was normal ketogenic dieting. I say that to mean that you may be able to get away with some higher carbs and still stick to keto if you have higher fiber foods. Also, you might try a modified Atkins approach, which is just a little higher meat, and see if you can stay in ketosis. A good friend of mine, Yemeni, he actually is able to get his protein really high and actually still stay in ketosis. What's the best alternative? Oh, actually, next question. Leslie asks, for a 17-year-old who is super active and into sports, will getting him into keto adapted be better for stamina or stay carb adapted? Leslie, the real question is he performing well right now? Is he performing well right now? If he's performing really well right now and his stamina is fine, you can keep doing what he's doing and try and optimize that diet. If he has a hard time with body fatness and things of that nature, doesn't respond to carbs as well, it could be something in the near future that you could consider. They are doing studies now with youth and ketogenic dieting. Mantis asks, I'm on keto diet, goal fat loss. How often do you offer to get out to maintenance from big calorie deficit to avoid fat loss? Okay, great question. Basically what Mantis is asking is how often should I calorie cycle? There's research from Devuti recently actually that basically showed that they basically had people do calorie deficit for 10 days and then they basically had them eat normal calories for like 3 days. So out of 2 weeks time they were eating at maintenance calories. The other thing you do is do a calorie deficit for 5 days and then come back with like 500 calorie deficit for 5 days and then go and do your normal calories on the weekends. Or you can do extreme, which is intermittent fasting. 2 days a week you could eat 500 calories on 2 days a week, and the rest of the days eat maintenance calories. So there's several ways to cycle calories, but all of those ways likely result in higher long-term metabolism. I love this rapid fire stuff. This is it, man. That's what I live for. This is what I live for. So people recommend adding coconut oil to your diet because of MCTs. This is Anthony Poon. But it's only 62 to 65% MCT in coconut oil. What are your thoughts about that? Well, it's still getting MCTs up in the diet. It's tasty. It's nice to cook with. There's a lot of advantages to using coconut oil. So I absolutely think it's beneficial. If you're saying, is there a better way? You know, if you want to get your MCTs higher, you know, when you have coffee or when you have a drink, putting some MCT oil in there. One of the problems though with MCT oil though is it does have, it can hurt your stomach. So some of the powders out there that are plated on soluble corn fiber seem to not hurt your stomach as much. Can ketone supplementation help with cyclic bulking strategy when entering periodic reset phase to try keeping insulin sensitivity in check, i.e. bulking with carbs and resetting on plateau? Look, I do think ketones, exogenous ketones, will enhance insulin sensitivity, so it may help on a bulk, absolutely. Okay, Daniel Lambert asks, what about the idea that fast carbs right after training straight into muscles, or is that a myth? Daniel, no, it's not a myth. Actually, Ivy in 1988 did the classic study. Where he did a timing study and basically found that like if you are having carbs like right after your workout, that you actually do get them more in your muscle than if you stalled that. The real question is how paramount is that to your training? If you're training your legs twice a week, is it drastically important to get them replenished in 2 hours when you're not going to train for 5 days anyway? You have to make that decision. But I don't see a problem with having carbs after your workout, you know, if you're not keto. I'm going to let you guys have any interesting questions you want to ask me?
HIIT and hypertrophy.
HIIT and hypertrophy. We did HIIT in our laboratory versus steady state cardio without even resistance training in hockey players. HIIT increased muscle mass, low intensity cardio decreased it, and that's been published.
Steady state cardio after legs.
Steady state cardio after legs basically will cause you to lose muscle mass. So Sale did research back in the 90s, and what he did was he had people do cardio either on this, right, like you said, steady state cardio like after legs, or he had them do it on separate days. They gain more muscle and strength on separate days, so I would keep them separate.
Keto cycling.
Keto cycling, there's research by Paoli where because there's different cycles. You can take the weekends off on keto. Our lab didn't really show that was beneficial. In fact, it showed you could lose muscle with it. But Paoli, what they did was they had people go keto, like, for example, you might go keto for like 6 weeks and then transition into more of a lower carb, lower fat, and then into a Mediterranean diet. And pretty much you're actually just maintain your fat mass during those periods of time. And you do that maybe for like another 6 weeks to 8 weeks. And Mediterranean is going to be like high fiber, higher carb, higher protein intake. You know, your fat's probably around 30%. And then they transition back into keto and lost more fat. So that's the type of cycle that I recommend. Trey, yeah, it stands for females as well.
On a typical diet, how do you feel about refeed strategies? Refeed days, refeed cheat meals?
Great question. On a typical diet, I think refeed days, if you're talking about like calorie cycling back up to maintenance calories, could be beneficial. But you know, to be honest, if you go down, like if you're intermittent fasting, for example, and you were only eating 500 calories one day, and then on your normal days instead of maintenance, you were a couple hundred calories above, you still have a net deficit, right? So, and in which case, if you're calling that a refeed, I think that could be beneficial. So long as there's a calorie deficit, you're going to lose fat. If you're going to go on the weekends and go to Cheesecake Factory, which could be awesome, but if you're going to go to Cheesecake Factory and you're literally going to order everything on the menu, you pretty much could destroy your whole week. So, you know, you got to be careful with that.
So, should you mix high fat with high carb, high fat, high protein with high carb? So, what's the kind of separation between macro?
Macros, good question. You can mix high protein with high carb pretty much any time. You can get Atkins is pretty much high protein, high carb. Dr. Dominique D'Agostino, excuse me, my mistake. Atkins is pretty much high protein, high fat. Okay, and yes, absolutely. So, and like Dom does Atkins pretty much, and he stays in ketosis. Now, when you're talking about that, you're talking about probably like 30% of your diet's protein, I'd say. You know what I mean? So 55, 60s fat. You probably can get away with that if you're training hard. So as far as high carb, like I said, yeah, absolutely. Go as high protein, as you can. You're probably going to get leaner, according to Joey's work.
BFR training. Is there any way to overdo this style of training?
BFR training? Yeah, we actually did a study, myself, Ryan, and Linecky, a while back. I don't know when we published it, back in 2011 or something. But we did this meta-analysis, and we basically found that BFR was optimized at 2 to 3 days a week. Whereas when you went higher than that, like 4, 5, 6 days a week, you don't get as many gains. So I don't know if it's like, you can overdo anything, but I don't know if it's overdoing it. It's just you get a point of where you're not getting more gains past 2 to 3 days a week.
How important is sleep? Getting 8 hours, what does that do?
How important is sleep? Man, I'll tell you what, like, if myself, Andy, Paul, if we got sleep, man, I'll tell you what, how cool would that be? How cool would that be? Like, Andy was asking me, earlier today, he goes, hey Doc, is it okay if I'm pulling all-nighters here? I'm like, I want you to get sleep, Andy, but did you pull all-nighter here last night? He's like, yeah. There's a lot of work that goes into like the stuff that we do here, like the infographics you see, the videos you see, the articles, the studies and stuff to help you guys and really this community. It's a lot of work, and so we do sacrifice sleep, but sleep helps. Yeah, sleep is powerful. It makes you more insulin sensitive. It makes you leaner. It makes you less hungry. It makes your muscles grow more. It makes your cognitive function work that much better. So absolutely.
Segue off that one. Sleep and fat loss.
Good question. Sleep and fat loss. Here's the thing. There's lots of studies showing that when you lack sleep, you're insulin resistant, which is going to make you gain fat. There's studies showing that when you lack sleep, you're way hungrier, which is going to make you involuntarily eat more calories. There's also data out there that shows when you lack sleep, your NEAT is less. That's your spontaneous activity, which is also going to show that you will gain fat. Joe Zucci says, what do you think of Mike O'Hearn supplementing with ketones while still eating a high-carb diet? This is really interesting. Mike O'Hearn is a really good friend of mine. I just saw Mike at the Olympia contest, and actually Mike will probably come. He'll probably come out here probably in the next couple months or so. But anyway, the Titan, right? Literally the Titan. But anyway, I think exogenous ketones are the wave of the future for the sport nutrition world. I think they improve insulin sensitivity, and they're an alternative energy source. So I think it's absolutely beneficial.
Going off of what you said earlier with the sleep, hormones and dieting.
Hormones and dieting, yes. This is a big one, guys. Here's the thing. When people do contest prep, we've done a lot of case studies with people doing contest prep, and they come out of their contest when they're doing natural bodybuilding, and their testosterone is under 100. When the normal range is anywhere from 400 to 1200. And yes, that range matters for muscle growth. There's recent research demonstrating that. But so, what are ways that you can help assist with that? That's a huge area of research. One thought that we do have is possibly intermittent fasting with in Ramadan has shown to seem to maintain testosterone levels even kind of in a calorie deficit with more judo athletes. We know also, again, going back to the Davudi research, that intermittent fasting seems to sustain metabolism. So you kind of would guess that it may also be helping with things like testosterone. I think doing a ketogenic diet can be beneficial. We did a cyclic ketogenic diet where people were calorie deficit and they sustained their testosterone levels. So those are just some tips I would have for you. There's also some supplementation you possibly can do, like fenugreek, but that's a whole other topic.
All right, we're going to do about 2 more. Personal question from someone. What is your favorite type of food or dessert?
My favorite type of food or dessert? That's a really good question. Okay, my favorite dessert. I'm going to go with brownies and like gooey brownies with ice cream, but low carb ice cream, right? We have a 50 calorie delights ice cream, and that the brownies are so gooey that it's almost like chocolate fudge. So the fudge is kind of just like moving into the ice cream, and then I take peanut butter cups, like the Quest peanut butter cups or something like that, and I crush them over the brownie, and then take whipped cream and just pour that over top. My favorite birthday cake is probably like, what is my favorite birthday cake? It's a German chocolate cake.
Ooh.
German chocolate cake. And I love pumpkin pie. I mean, obviously, I could go on and on about desserts, but absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. So, my mom makes really good pizza. That's probably my favorite non-baking food. Okay, so one more question. You want me to ask you guys?
Do you have one?
Sure.
Last one, make it good.
Okay. Brian, you're the man, by the way. We really appreciate. Brian is like freaking awesome. You contribute a lot to the community, and we really appreciate you, buddy. So let's read this question. Brian says, if you are very lean, 12 to 14% for a woman, that's shredded for a woman, and setting ketosis macros, do you set fat to cover your entire total daily energy expenditure, or count total calories to cover it? Argument with my wife about protein sparing fat intake. Brian, it's a really good question. When you're talking about like ketogenic ratios and like your total daily energy expenditure and things like this, it's very tricky. When we talk about like, let's go and just say like your macros are based on 75% fat, 75% fat, 25% protein, 10% carb. Or some people will do the ratio, 3 to 1 ketogenic to non-ketogenic ratio, right? 4 to 1 ketogenic to non-ketogenic ratios, right? So let's just do the ratios to make it simple. So 3 to 1, so which would be maybe about 75% fat, 25% total carb protein. Now, if I expend more, if I'm keto adapted, and I do an hour of long duration cardio, and let's just assume that I burn 500 calories of fat, count that fat intake toward, or that fat expenditure toward those ratios, because you're still using fat even though it's not dietary. So my thought is that you kind of have to take into account both dietary fat and fat that you're utilizing as well. So case in point, like if you're intermittent fasting, every other day fasting, you only have 500 calories that day. If you're going to get your protein high enough to kind of spare muscle, it will be hard to maintain that perfect 75% ratio of your diet. So you might be 50% fat that day, and it may be like 35, 40% protein. And even though it looks like you're out of your ratio in your diet, the fat you're expending actually brings you up to more that 75, 80%, even 90% ketogenic ratios.